She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The way her fingers traced the edge of my shoulder told me everything. I wasn't alone anymore. Out here, in the cold metal veins of a space station orbiting nothingness, I forgot what warmth felt like. Not heat warmth. The kind that breathes against your skin. That lingers after touch. That makes guilt taste sweet before it burns. Her skin was pale like starlight, her hair braided like constellations, her presence uninvited, unexplainable, but undeniable. When she stood behind me, silent, her hand resting gently on my shoulder while I stared at my wife's photo, I didn't pull away. I should have. I wanted to. But the loneliness in her eyes mirrored my own. And in that suspended moment, between memory and betrayal, she leaned closer, not to kiss me, not to own me, just to be near. And God, I let her. I used to think radiation was what killed men in space. I was wrong. It's the memory of arms you can't reach anymore. 93 days into the mission, and the hum of the station has become my only companion. The Europa X orbits in silence, circling a frozen planet that no one remembers. I've stopped counting the hours. Time here isn't linear, it drips, slides, folds in on itself like airless cloth. Each night, I do the same thing. I pull out the photo, a worn, creased snapshot of my wife holding our daughter. Her smile is small but real, captured just after our child took her first step. I keep it tucked inside my uniform, close to my chest. I look at it like a man looks at land from a lifeboat. Not with hope. Just hunger. Today started like the rest. Systems check. Vitals logged. Satellite adjustments. The routine is what keeps the madness back. But then the proximity alert blinked, a weak signal, organic, barely detectable. I should have dismissed it. Space is filled with phantom readings, glitches. But something pulled at me. Something wordless. I suited up and stepped into the external access pod. The stars felt closer today. The silence more intentional. I drifted toward the source, guided by short thruster bursts. And then I saw her. She wasn't moving. Her body floated just beyond the maintenance corridor, arms slack, legs folded as if in sleep. She wore a red suit, deep crimson, unlike anything from Earth's database. Its seams shimmered faintly, laced with silver patterns that pulsed with a rhythm too perfect to be accidental. I brought her inside. The decontamination process ran automatically. No traceable pathogens. No identification chip. Just a pulse. A quiet, persistent heartbeat. Her face was almost human. Almost. Her skin white, almost translucent. Her features sharp, defined, haunting. And her hair, long and braided like it had meaning. Like each twist was a word in a language no longer spoken. I placed her in the med pod and stared. I told myself it was curiosity. That I was doing my duty. That helping a lost life form was the right thing. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew better. That night, I didn't look at the photo. I sat by the window, eyes on the stars, wondering what she was doing there. Who she had lost. What brought her to drift alone in the void. There was something ancient in her presence, something broken but proud. She woke just before dawn cycle. Her eyes opened slowly, silver with a faint glow that didn't come from any light source in the room. She looked at me. Not startled. Not afraid. Just aware. Deeply, wholly aware. She didn't speak. Neither did I. She reached out, fingers brushing the edge of the MedPod's frame. Her hand was slender, too graceful for this world. Her gaze dropped for a moment to the floor, then returned to me. In that silence, something passed between us. Not desire. Not yet. But recognition. It struck me then that I had not truly felt seen in months. Maybe years. My wife loved me, of that I was sure. But love through a screen, through time delays and static interference, is not the same. It's not a presence. It's not breath shared in the same room. This girl, this being, looked at me like she knew what it was to lose warmth. To miss a touch so long you forgot the shape of it. I didn't even know her name. The station logs would demand a full report. Protocol dictated I isolate her, run scans, alert central. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I sat with her as the artificial day broke, casting pale light through the station's steel corridors. She turned her face toward it slowly, as if remembering what sunlight used to feel like. And I wondered, had she ever stood under a real sun? Had someone once held her the way I now long to be held again? She looked at me once more, and this time she smiled. It was not a smile of thanks, nor seduction. It was something simpler, more devastating, recognition of loneliness. I stood, hesitated, then walked away. I told myself I needed rest. But the truth was I didn't trust what was happening in my chest. Later, in my quarters, I reached for the photo. I held it in my palm, staring at my wife's frozen smile. And all I could feel was the echo of another gaze. One that asked no questions, made no promises, but understood everything I couldn't say. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. She sat in silence for most of the first day, knees drawn close, eyes flicking from one detail of the room to another like she was memorizing a world not her own. I kept the cameras offline. I'd rerouted the data feeds, cut the system's auto-flagging, and deleted the incoming report requests from Central Command. She wasn't in a database. No known species matched her bias signature. According to Earth, she didn't exist. And maybe that's why I didn't turn her in. Or maybe it was something else. Her presence filled the room even when she didn't move. When I checked her vitals, her skin was cool but not cold. Smooth, not synthetic. She watched my hands closely, as if the act of human touch itself was unfamiliar but fascinating. Her eyes, always alert, held a softness beneath a silver shimmer. Not machine-like. Not predator. Just still. Like someone who had finally stopped running. By the second day, she began to speak. Not full sentences. Just fragments. Echoes of the words I had used around her. My name. Water. Orbit. Simple things. But her tone was precise, shaped. She didn't mimic. She understood. I could feel it in the pauses she left, like she wasn't just repeating but weighing meaning. By the third day, she said my name in a way no one ever had. Like it meant something more than identity, like it was a note in a song only she could hear. "Ethan," she said, slowly, like tasting it. "That's me," I replied, voice hoarse. She pointed to herself. "Lissa." It didn't feel like a name she was giving. It felt like a secret she'd finally allowed to breathe. That night, I stared at the photo again. My wife's eyes were as kind as ever, her smile unchanged. But as I held the image, I realized I couldn't recall the sound of her voice anymore. The calls had stopped 2 weeks ago. Delays, system outages, they'd said. But the truth was, I'd stopped waiting for the signal light. I sat at the edge of the observation deck, the stars bleeding through the glass like frost fire. Behind me, I heard the soft shift of footsteps. Lissa stood there, no sound in her motion, only presence. Her hair was still wet from the wash unit, braided neatly behind her back. Without a word, she stepped closer. I didn't turn. I didn't speak. I didn't want to break the strange quiet we'd created. Then I felt it. Her hand on my shoulder. Barely a touch, like the memory of one. But it was enough. Something cracked inside me. Not broken but released. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on the photo in my lap. She didn't try to take it. Didn't flinch. Just stood with me in that impossible stillness. The guilt came next, like ice climbing up my spine. What kind of man feels comfort from a stranger's touch while holding a picture of his wife? But at the same time, that touch was the first human warmth I had felt in 3 months. And perhaps longer, if I was being honest. "You miss her," Lissa said softly, and I didn't ask how she knew. I just nodded. "I miss them too," she added. "Your people?" I asked, voice low. She didn't answer immediately. Her fingers slid off my shoulder, and she walked to the window, pressing one palm lightly to the glass. "Gone," she said. "All of them." She spoke in pieces, the way someone speaks of trauma buried too deep for language. Her planet, unnamed in our systems, was eradicated. Not by war. Not by plague. But by fear. The Federation had scanned their neural networks, misunderstood their ability to connect, called it infiltration. They wiped the entire species in a defensive strike. Preemptive, they said. She was never meant to survive. "So why are you here?" I asked. She turned, eyes not angry, just tired. To remember what was. I watched her, silhouetted against a field of stars, and felt the air thicken between us. She didn't come here to live. She came here to feel. To find echoes of what she'd lost in others. And I, so certain I was the rescuer, had become the one being rescued from my own erosion. The days blurred after that. We talked more. She learned quickly, her English improving by the hour. She could speak in full sentences by day 5. Her questions were never about technology or Earth. They were about emotion. "Why does missing someone hurt here?" she asked once, pointing to her chest. I didn't have an answer. At night, we would sit by the window. She would watch the light curve around the station's edges, and I would try not to notice how easily her presence filled the void. Sometimes, our hands would touch by accident. Neither of us would move. And always, when I returned to my quarters, I looked at the photo. I didn't cry. I didn't pray. I just stared and asked myself if love could really survive this far from its source. Could a marriage stretched across galaxies still hold shape? Or was it becoming a memory too? The station's AI began flagging anomalies in my biometric data. Elevated cortisol levels. Shifts in neural frequency. Spikes in dopamine at irregular intervals. I dismissed them at first, chalked it up to stress, disrupted sleep cycles. But the readings became consistent. Alarming. Something inside me was changing. I ran a private diagnostic. No pathogens, no physical symptoms. Just reconfiguration. My brainwave patterns no longer matched the baseline recorded when I first arrived. The emotional centers lit up more often, especially during non-stimulated periods. Memory recall was sharper. Dreams more vivid. And then there was the reaction to her proximity. Lisa. She had taken to sitting beside me in silence. Not every hour. Just enough to make me forget what being alone had felt like. Sometimes she would speak in that voice of hers, soft, round-edged, as if her words were shaped by empathy instead of sound. The night we connected, there was no ritual. No seduction. No plan. She had entered my quarters, barefoot, quiet. Her braid had unraveled slightly, and she looked less like a visitor from another world, and more like a woman searching for something familiar. I was sitting by the panel, rewatching a blurry video of my daughter's birthday last year. The candle wouldn't light. Everyone laughed. Lisa didn't say anything. She just watched. Then, slowly, she moved closer. Not predatory. Not hesitant. Just present. She knelt beside me, her fingers grazing my wrist. The screen dimmed, but neither of us moved. Her eyes found mine, and for the first time, I felt like someone was inside my head, not intruding, not taking, just witnessing. And then it happened. It wasn't sex, not in the human sense. Our bodies barely touched. But my thoughts unfolded into hers. Memories unspooled. Feelings I hadn't voiced in years surged to the surface: grief, guilt, longing, joy. She didn't flinch. She absorbed them. Reflected them. Returned them with fragments of her own. Starless skies, burning cities, the echo of a mother's lullaby in a dying language. When it ended, I wasn't exhausted. I was hollowed out, but gently. As if someone had cleaned a wound I didn't know I carried. She whispered one thing before she left: "You're not broken. You're adapting." The next day, I couldn't concentrate. My hands shook when I held the photo. My wife's smile no longer grounded me, it haunted me. Like a promise I wasn't sure I had the strength to keep. The emergency beacon lit up that afternoon. A message from Earth. My wife. The delay was long. Her voice came through fractured. But her words were clear enough. "Ethan. I don't know if it's just distance or something else. But you're different. Even in your messages. You feel far. Not in space. In spirit. I stared at the screen, unable to reply. How do you tell someone you still love them, but that love no longer lives where it used to? Lissa found me later. I was sitting in the hydroponic bay, staring at the only living plant on board. A sunflower. Half grown. Half dying. You heard from her, she said. I nodded. Does it hurt? Yes. She didn't ask why. Instead, she placed her hand over mine. I noticed how naturally it fit there now. Your love, she said, eyes downcast, is always about distance. Reaching. Waiting. Holding on to shadows. I didn't defend it. Couldn't. She was right. Ours, she continued, was never about space. It was about merging. Becoming. Feeling everything, even what is not ours. That sounds dangerous, I whispered. So is loving a ghost. I laughed. It sounded more like a gasp. I wanted to say I was scared. That I didn't know what I was becoming. But the words caught in my throat. Because maybe I wasn't becoming anything. Maybe I was finally uncovering what had been buried under routine, duty, loyalty. And maybe, just maybe, it was okay to change. But God, why did it feel like betrayal? That night, I stood by the window, Lissa beside me. I didn't hold the photo. She didn't reach for me. But our reflections overlapped in a glass blurred, shifting, one bleeding into the other. And I wondered, if this was what becoming someone else looked like. The alert came at 4:12 station time. Unregistered biological presence confirmed. Initiate isolation protocol. I froze. The message flashed across every screen in the command deck. It was automated, irreversible, and already pinged back to Central Command. Somewhere on Earth, red lights were flashing. Somewhere far, far away, they were already writing her off as a threat. I raced to the observation bay. She was still there sitting by the window, her head tilted slightly as if listening to something I couldn't hear. When she saw my face, her expression didn't change. It was as if she already knew. They found me, she said. I nodded. My throat was dry. What happens now? She asked, not afraid. Just, resigned. They'll come. They'll scan. They'll take you into quarantine. You'll be studied. Contained. Dissected. I didn't reply. She turned back to the stars, and for a long time, neither of us said a word. The silence between us, once comforting, now buzzed with dread. I had 15 hours before the patrol ship arrived. 15 hours to choose. The escape pod was built for emergencies, not for fugitives. But it had its own NAV system and enough fuel to reach the outer orbit of the ice moons. After that, nothing but dark. I ran simulations. I mapped routes. I calculated probabilities. I did everything except look her in the eyes. When I finally did, it was like breaking the surface after holding my breath too long. I can help you get out, I said. She blinked slowly. Why would you do that? Because I can't let them erase you? She stood and walked toward me. Her face, illuminated by the overhead glow, looked more alien now. Not because of her features but because of what they held. Loss. Resolve. Love. Ethan, she said, if you do this, you will lose everything. I've already lost parts of myself I didn't know existed. No, she said, reaching out. Her fingers touched my chest, over my heart. You've only just begun to find them. My hand moved to cover hers. The skin was cold, but the contact burned. I don't know what this is, I whispered. Us. You. Me. I don't even know if I'm in control anymore. You are. But you've confused control with armor. With pretending. You thought loyalty meant silence. I stepped back. The words hit too precisely. I wanted to deny them. Defend myself. But I couldn't. I didn't touch you because I was lonely, I said. I touched you because you made me feel alive. And that terrifies me. I know, she said softly. She walked past me, toward the pod bay. There's a ship, I said. I know, she repeated. It's dangerous. So is staying. She turned around one last time, just as the warning klaxon began its slow, rhythmic pulse. A countdown had started. 11 hours. They'll ask if you were manipulated, she said. If I used you. If I altered your mind. Did you? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped forward, placed her hand against my chest again, and leaned in. If love is manipulation, then maybe my species died from loving too much. I closed my eyes. You make me feel like I'm betraying everything I swore to protect, I murmured. Not by touching, she said. By feeling. I pulled away. Not in rejection but to breathe. Everything about this was wrong. Everything about this was real. Later, I sat alone in the control room. My wife's voice echoed from a recorded message, something old, saved from a call months ago. She was laughing. The baby had knocked over soup. I cried. Not because I didn't love her, but because love is not always about staying. Sometimes, love is about letting go of who you were, to find who you're becoming. I left the station door unlocked. I loaded the pod with enough supplies for 2. And then I waited. She came, hours later, without a word. She didn't ask if I was coming. She simply opened the hatch. And I stood there, torn between 2 galaxies. Between who I was and who I was becoming. As the door slid shut, our reflections appeared side by side in the polished metal. So close. So impossibly far. I sent the final message at 5:56, encoded in the private channel only she would know. No voice. No face. Just an image, the photo of her and our daughter, wrapped in time like something sacred. One line of text followed beneath it. I still think of you. Every day. Then I cut the signal. Deleted the log. Let the silence take over. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel anything at all. The moment I hit send, the air inside the command deck shifted like something old and heavy had finally lifted. Or maybe fallen. It was hard to tell. Lissa stood by the airlock. Her posture was still, but her presence radiated something that felt like grief wrapped in calm. She didn't ask if I meant to stay. She didn't ask what I had told Earth. She only said, "Thank you for not erasing me." The escape pod was small, barely enough room for 2 people and the basic essentials. But she moved like she belonged there, like the confined space was a kind of freedom she hadn't tasted in years. We loaded supplies in silence. Each motion deliberate. No wasted words. Her fingers brushed mine once when handing over a data chip. Neither of us reacted. Outside, the patrol ship's signal grew louder. A heartbeat echoing from a world that had already judged her guilty. "They'll search everything," I said. "They'll ask where you went." She nodded. "And you'll say you never knew me?" I didn't answer. Because we both knew I couldn't lie that well. We sealed the hatch. She looked at me one last time. "Not because of love," I whispered, answering the questions she hadn't asked. "But because you reminded me what it feels like to be alive." Her smile was a flicker. Nothing more. Then she stepped into the pod. The door hissed shut. I activated the manual launch sequence. No automated log. No beacon. Just a pulse of raw code old, nearly forgotten that told the system to forget this ever happened. The pod slipped away into the void. No trail. No sound. Just vanishing. I watched until the last glimmer of its light disappeared. The station fell quiet again. I returned to the observation deck, where everything had begun. The stars were still there, indifferent as always. I sat in the same chair, held the same photo. But I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I let myself feel what was left. Not grief. Not regret. Something colder. Not because I was lost, but because I had accepted the version of me that would never return to Earth. She hadn't taken anything from me. She'd given me the one thing I never admitted I needed. Release. Not from duty. Not from love. But from the illusion that I was whole. The message from command came hours later. Biological anomaly no longer detectable. Continue mission. Status, green. I sent back the required acknowledgement. That was the last thing I gave them. Now, I move through the halls like a ghost made of skin. The AI responds to my voice, but it no longer recognizes my tone. The plants in the hydroponic bay still bloom. The systems stay operational. But the man who arrived here, the husband, the father, the faithful Earth engineer, he is no longer aboard. And maybe that's the point. Sometimes, you don't lose who you are all at once. Sometimes, you touch a planet that's already gone. And in doing so, leave a part of yourself behind it.